right. For those of you who were unfortunate enough to be here for the last class, and that's most of you, unfortunately, uh, I thought, well, we'll go over a bunch of projects as a class. Well, it didn't work very well. So what I've handed out to you, what each one of you in here has, who's in the class, has is a 21-page write-up on how to create what actually is a fairly simple Android application. So what I'm going to do is, rather than sit there and go over it with you, because I really and truly think even if you're good enough, I'm not. I don't think that we're good enough that we can probably go over this in 2 hours. So I'm going to try to build it for you so you can kind of see the stuff that you'll be getting yourselves into. That said, and again, many of you heard this previously, but I want to say it again and say it quickly. These are the classes, the first year classes for fall. If you have not yet taken the 119 class, there'll be a morning section with me, 8 to 9:50 Monday and Wednesday, and an afternoon section with Jim Schmidt, Monday, Wednesday from 3 to 4:50. Jim is teaching this class, and it's Monday, Wednesday from 1 to 2:50, I believe. Denny Wright is teaching this class, and I believe it's Monday, Wednesday from 10 to noon. All right? Here is the second year classes. The Advanced Java class, we're going to use the same book. I have all of the assignments out there already. So if for some reason you have nothing better to do and you want to start on it in the summer, that'd be your call. All right, so it'll be the same book. And I hope that we go over the material that's in that book in no more than 12 weeks. So or 11 weeks, something like that. So the last 6 weeks or so, we can actually do some Android. This class, the 152-148 relational database coding, that builds off of the 147 class, which is the class many of you are in with Jim Schmidt right now, or maybe you've already taken it with me or with someone else. And that class will be in the PHP programming language, and will also, for the last half, you'll learn how to create PHP apps that work together with MySQL databases. The 152-149 class is a class in C programming. Probably the driest programming language you'll ever come in contact with, but also probably the most powerful programming language there is. That's my opinion. The 152-158 class is a class in Twitter Bootstrap. If you've never heard of Bootstrap, I mentioned it last hour. I said it's kind of like CSS on steroids. Literally, there are hundreds of pre-built classes that you plug into programs. All right. And if you want to know more about that class, go out to getbootstrap.com. And then finally, the 152-161 is an ASP.NET class. Now, to my knowledge, these three classes here, these three, are on Tuesday, Thursday. And the last one here is also on Tuesday, Thursday. This one, to my knowledge, is on Monday, Wednesday. And again, the reason for that is, with 8 hours in a day to have classes, and the classes being 2 hours apiece, you can't have 5 of them in a day. All right? So, as of now, I'm scheduled to teach all of these, and I'm scheduled to teach one section of this. I have no idea if things are going to change. All right? If you say, well, how do I find out whether or not things change? If you've never done this before, then I would suggest that you go out to courses.blackhawk.edu. All right, and that's just, you get there from any internet connection. So if I wanted to know how many people are in the 152-158 class right now, just put that in and boom. So there's 11 in there now and 13 seats available. You get the idea. Lastly about this, just so you know, if you go out to the P drive, that's not the right one either, is it? If you go out to the P drive for this class, go out to the P drive period, and you go out to the P drive and you go out to CIS, not CSS, the P drive CIS, there is a JP Scott Fall Books folder. There's a Fall 2015. And there's the book list for first year classes. Denny hasn't figured out what book he wants to use yet. As soon as he tells me, I'll try to update that. And for the third semester classes, these are the books. So it's all out there. These are all clickable links. So if you click on any one of those, it brings you out to the publisher's page. All right, and I'm starting to fill in stuff for those already. Okay, so that said, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to follow the steps that are on this handout that I gave you, all right, and attempt to build this. The problem is, if you try to follow along, that's fine. But the problem is, if you have a problem in 2 hours, we probably can't solve it. All right, so I just want to show you the kind of thing that we're going to be doing. All right, so I'm going to come in here and just taking it from the top, I'm following the same steps that you have on your handout. So I've started Eclipse. And again, when you come in here to do a file new, some of you, when you do a file new, will see Android application project like this. Some of you won't, evidently. If you do see it, choose that. If you don't see it, go down to New Other and go to Android and select Android application project from there. Both of them get you to the exact same place. This is the opening Android screen. It's the one that's shown on page 1 in your handout. So I'm going to call this Tip Calculator. And I'm going to just put my name on the end because I don't have one. Call Tip Calculator Jeff. This is the name that would be used if I save this thing and try to put it out on the App Store, either for free or for people to buy. So it can have spaces. The project name cannot have spaces, so you see that it ran everything together automatically. The package name we're going to set up very similar to the way we've been setting it up already, so that mine is edu.blackhawk.jscott. All right. For the minimum required SDK, talked with John about this a little bit, and the recommendation most of the time is at a minimum we go with Android 4.0, which is ice cream sandwich. All of these things, as you can see, they're all named after what they call treats. Okay? So I've got that here. Yours may be a little bit different from mine because I've done an upgrade on mine and you haven't done an upgrade on yours. All right, we're not going to do that this semester. This right here is just a bunch of internal stuff that we just have to, you can make sure that your workspace is okay, etc., and just click next. If I click next again, I will in just a second, but if I click next again, then the icon that I'm going to have is going to be the little Android icon. If I click over here and choose Browse and find my own icon, so for instance, I've got one out there already on the P drive for this, and it's right here, and it's called Tip Calculator. Okay, so you'll see how it changes. Here we're going to use blank activity virtually 100% of the time. Here, virtually 100% of the time, we'll keep the activity name and we'll keep the layout name. So boom. So what that has done is that's already gotten you through the first 5 pages of this handout because most of the stuff that was in there were screenshots. All right. If you have questions on any of that stuff or you want to, I'm not going to go over perspectives and stuff again because we talked about that before. But if you go over any of that stuff or if you got questions, it's on page 6 of the handout. All right. Then what we're going to attempt to build is what you see in step 9. If you weren't aware of this, I'm not opening it now, but if we open up that cabinet that's back there, right past David, all right, that it's a rolling cabinet, that cabinet has in it 12 Android tablets that we'll be using next semester, and it also has 6 Mac Air books or whatever. I'm not sure what they are. I don't remember. The 12 hopefully is going to be sufficient. The 6, well, we wish we had more. I just got an email from the person who's running the grant saying that for the IT web software developer program, there's $10,000 we're supposed to spend. So I'm having John go and price out how much it would cost to maybe get another 6 of those Macs. Then we'll be up to 12 for those 2. And if there's any money left, maybe you get a couple more of the Android tablets. All right, so again, what you see in the handout on page 6, so this is it right here, but if I whip up to page 6, this is usually about the first or maybe the second app I attempt to have people build. And when you look at it, you might go, that's just really hard. It's not really that difficult. All right. That said, you have to be able to really follow instructions. It's going to be paramount. Those of you, when students come up to me at the end of a semester and go, you know what, Jeff, I got A's in all your classes. I never even bought the book. I never even read the book. You're not making me proud. All right? Because all I can do is supplement the stuff that's in the book. There's a lot more that's in the book that I never have time to go over with you, unless you wanted a class of 68 hours a lecture. I don't think anybody wants that. All right? So this is what we're going to create. The only thing that's in here that we're going to actually input is that value right here, where it's got 3460. That value is known as an edit text, and it's similar to a text box for those of you who are also in the C# class. All the rest of the stuff that you see here, bill amount, percent, tip, total, and the 15%, the 519, the 3979, those are all what are known as text views, or what we call labels in the C# class. All right, and there's a couple buttons in here. Now ours is going to look a little different because if you follow all the steps in here, it'll look a little bit different, but the functionality should be the same. All right, I'll just leave it at that. So again, that's the different stuff that's in there. All the names that we use for it and everything else. Okay? All right. When you create a project using Eclipse, you've got your choice. You can create it in what's called XML, or the Extensible Markup Language, or you can create it from what's called the Graphical Layout Editor. That's what you see on your screen right now. All right. I literally did a thing on Google Images, and I added the arrows that you see in here. This arrow right here, this is your Package Explorer area. What you're going to notice is as soon as we start to look at the code itself, you've got a lot more files and a lot more folders in here than you have for a typical Java project that we've been working on all year. All right, so all that will be shown in the Package Explorer. This is called your palette right here. That's the equivalent of your toolbox that you have in C#. All right, it looks a little different. It acts a little bit different. All right, this right here is your editor area. That's where all the magic, so to speak, happens. You've got your choice when you do this. If you're going to build stuff graphically, I could go, for example, and grab a button right here and drag it out here, and you're going to see the button like this. Or I can take the button and I can drag it up in here, and you also see it there. That's what I'm going to do. All right. This right here is called your outline area, and that shows everything that you have in your graphical window. This is your properties window. It looks a little bit different than the properties window that you have in Visual Studio. It acts a little bit different than the properties window you have in Visual Studio. Finally, the area that's down here is going to be either your debug area, or it's going to be what's called your logcat area. If you were here for the last class, John walked me through it because he's very good on setting up the perspective for Android, and we set it up so that we could have the logcat. Logcat literally logs everything that you're doing, every keystroke that you're doing. All right? Okay. Now, before we do this, because I'm going to start right here in just a second, but I want to, again, many of you heard this when you were here the other day. For the first couple projects that we create in the Android class, we don't use those tablets back there. We use what's called an emulator. So I showed people last time how to build their own emulator. And to do that, you come over to Window and you go down to Android Virtual Device Manager. You click it. Yours will be empty. So you'll click Create, and you'll fill in all this stuff. What stuff? All of this stuff. All right. I'm doing this off of a Nexus 1. So my AVD, which is my Android virtual device name, is Nexus 1. If I click here, any place that you see here that's got drop-down arrows means I've got a list of stuff I can choose. All right. So we went over that last time. But that's not what's important. What is important is Once you've got your emulator built, make sure you start that up as soon as you start up your Eclipse session. The emulator can be flaky. All right, that's my word. Sometimes it works without a problem. Sometimes it works and there's lots of problems. All right, so I click Start to start up the emulator. Don't worry about this stuff. We go through it later. But where it says Scale here, I'm going to remove all this. Because if I leave it here, it says I want it to be 3.7 inches. I want it to be bigger. So I'm going to remove everything that's from there, and I'm going to click Launch. It launches the emulator, and you're going to see the emulator. Ideally, you're going to see it up and running in 30 to 45 seconds, if not less than that. Sometimes what you'll notice is the emulator just won't start. You'll leave it sit there, and nothing will happen. Then if that happens, you start it again. All right? Like I said, we're doing a lot of stuff where we're running this, but we're running it basically under a virtual machine, which is our virtual desktop. So a lot of the standard stuff that you see, it's a little harder to get it to work. And I think John would agree with this, that if you hook up the tablets, by and large, it's almost like that as far as how fast it comes up, literally. That's why I think it's important. If there's time next semester that the last 5 or 6 weeks, there's a chance, the opportunity to do Android stuff, then starting in spring of next year, we'd be using the tablets from the beginning, from the get-go. All right. Doesn't look like it's coming up, so I'm just going to try to start it again. Sometimes when you try starting it a second time, I might get an error message now because it wrote a bunch of files out to the system for me. See what it says? Could not write the file because there's no space. All right, because it tried doing it before even though it failed. If that's the case, then I have to literally go out to my D drive. Try to go out to my D drive. Up, there it is. Nope. So I've got to go out to my D drive then, and you'll learn this very quickly. And I got to go out to Users, J. Scott, Android, AVD, Nexus, and you'll notice I've got this file. That's a pretty big file. It tried to create it, and then it tried to create it again, and that's why it gave me the error message. So I'm telling it to remove it. You sure you want to remove it? Yes. It's gone. I probably could remove my cache file. It's not that big. I'm just going to leave it there. So I'm going to come in here and try to start it up again. Notice I didn't get the error message this time. That's a good start. And I'll give this some time. Hopefully that it'll start up quickly. All right. If I ran this program right now, literally this is what you'd see on the screen. You may or may not be able to tell if you look right there. That's that icon that I added, the one with the little calculator on it that said Tip Calculator. Here it says Tip Calculator Jeff because that's the name of the project. Over here it says Hello World. All right, that's what you get by default, is something that says Hello World. All right. Well, I want to work in here, but it's not going to let me work in here until I got this closed. If I close this, the emulator won't come up. All right. So, but since I want to show you how to do this, I'm just going to close this right now. So I have no emulator, and that's fine. All right. Okay. So if you're following along, I'm on page 9. It says go to the outline in Eclipse. That's what's right here, right there. And on step 12 it says, or step 11 it says remove the Hello World text view. It's real hard. You highlight it, you hit delete, and it's gone. Okay, that's all I wanted to do. Now, the relative layout means you lay out things left to right, and when you run out of room, you start on the next row. All right, that doesn't work all that great for this example, so I'm going to change the layout. How do I do that? I take my mouse and I click on there to highlight the layout. I right mouse click on it and I choose change layout. Some of the stuff that's in here is fairly intuitive. All right, so I'm changing the layout. All right, it'll come up, it'll take a second, and it'll ask me what kind of layout do I want. And you'll notice I'm going to choose table layout in a minute, and where it says relative layout right here, it'll change to table layout in a matter of seconds. All right, so I want table layout, and I'm going to click OK. And there it changed to table layout 1. Okay, I don't like the 1 on there, so I'm going to right mouse click on it, and now I'm going to choose edit ID. That's ID is the name, and I'm just going to remove that 1. Tell it to update any references. Boom. Now that's fixed. Okay, I'm creating a table layout because what I want to put in here are table rows. Okay, so how do I find that stuff? Well, it's not here, but if I go down to where it says layouts and if I click on that tab there, you'll notice that one of the things that's in here is table row. All right, so I'm going to put in a table row right there. I'm just going to literally drag it. So I took it, I highlighted it from here, and I'm dragging it and putting it right there. And it says table row 1. Well, since we're computer people, we always start with 0. So I'm going to right mouse click on here and change its ID from table row 1 to table row 0 and click OK. Now that's done. Okay? Now I'm going to do this in a little bit different order than we did it last time because last time we ran out of time. That's why I had you drag all that stuff in there. But I'm going to build it the way that it's shown in the book here. All right? So it says we want to put a text view and a text edit, all right, under this table row. So the first thing I want to do is find a text view. So I'm going to go up here to Form Widgets, and you'll notice way to the left it says text view. So I'm going to take and drag it right on top of where it's got my table row. And boom, it put a text view there. All right? Then I also want to put in what's called an edit text view. And it says there it's under text fields. And look at this. Everybody, look on the screen here. Some of this stuff is pre-done. That's for a phone number. That's for an email address. That's literally for an address, you know, street name, city, state, zip, etc. All right? There's a time field. There's a date field. All right? Now, if I put a 42 in there, that would be okay, except that expects that everything I put in there is a whole number. Why did they pick 42? I don't know. Maybe it's because it was Jackie Robinson's number. I don't really know. All right? But what I'm going to choose is the 42.0. And I'm going to drag that right up to where it says table row also. And now notice what I have here. All right? And don't worry, it's going to look a little funky on here until this gets built because we're going to have to change some settings. All right? Just like in the C# class, when I go and create this stuff, what I should do right away, and I mean right away, is I should change the names accordingly. So this, where it says text view, I'm going to right mouse click on that, and I'm going to choose edit ID. All right, and I'm going to change this to bill amount text view. All right, with a little b, sorry. So it's bill amount text view. That's its name. Okay, that's its name. Did everybody hear that? So I'm going to make sure the update references is highlighted and click OK. Is that the only way to do it? No. I could have also went down here in the properties window where it's got the ID and changed it down there. All right, I'm doing it in what I consider to be the most straightforward way possible. So that changed the name, but I also want to change its text to bill amount. So I'm going to right mouse click on it again, but now not say edit ID. I'm going to say edit text. And if I came in here, I could manually type in bill amount. But I don't want to do that. All right? And the reason I don't want to do that is that's not the suggested way of doing things for these apps. The suggested way of doing it is to add stuff from what's called your strings.xml file. We'll create that in a minute. But so I'll just leave it, I guess, for right now the way it is. So I'll cancel out of there. This one, where it says edit text 1, I don't want that name. I want it to be called bill amount. In fact, this one I was wrong. This one is bill amount label. I apologize. So that's bill amount label. All right, and this one is bill amount text view. Now I screwed up here. Everybody hear what I said? I screwed up here. What I call this one was bill amount text view. And it works okay. There's not a problem with it. What I really should have called that one was bill amount edit text. You should always name, the name should always be reflective of the type of control it is. So why am I not changing it? Because I've already got the code in here for you, and I use that name. Okay, so if you want to change yours, you can, but then you're going to have to change the code in here also. All right, so that's the first row. That row that you just saw, that's this right here. Does that make sense to people? That's it right there. All right. Now the next row, I had a hard time getting this to line up. So instead of having a label, a button, and a button, I put the labels here, and I put these buttons in a row by themselves down below. All right, just because it lined up better, it looked better when I ran it. Okay, so that's why I said it's going to look a little different than what you see right there. All right, so I'm going to come in now, and I added the first row in there in step 13. So I'm going to go to step 14. What does that mean? I'm going to go back down to layouts. I'm going to find table row, and I'm going to drag it up here again. And now notice it's table row 1. All right, John mentioned this last time because I'd forgotten about that. If you change the name right away for the first one, all the rest of them will change in turn. So there's table row 1. Okay, so under table row 1, it says we want to put 2 text views in there. So again, I'm going to come over here under form widgets. I'm going to grab a text view, drag it in there, let go, grab another text view, put it in there, and let go. There's my 2 text views. All right. So the first one I want to call %label. So I'm going to right mouse click on it, choose edit ID, and change it to %label. So that's %LABEL right there. And the other one I'm going to call %text view. Edit the ID and call that %text view. So now I've got 2 rows done. All right? And you can see it's sort of starting to shape up. It doesn't look great, but it's sort of starting to shape up. All right? Now I want to add a 3rd row. So I go back to layouts, over to table row, drag up my next one. There's row 2. That one will have the 2 buttons in it. So I go and where are buttons? They're under form widgets. I could have a small button, I could have a button. I think I'm going to use the small button because one's going to have a plus sign on it, one's going to have a minus sign on it. So they are smaller buttons. So I'm going to create the first one, put it underneath there, and the second one, grab it and put it underneath there. Okay? And I'm going to change the name of these buttons. So I'm going to right mouse click on the first one, go to edit ID, and change the name to %up button. All right, and I'm going to change the name of the second one. And that one, I don't know why that one's big, but it is. I guess because it's taking up the rest of the area. This one will be %down button. All right, so there they are. Okay. Now, these 2, if I really wanted to, since this is only going to have a plus in it and that's only going to have a minus in it, I guess I could go in here if I really wanted to, because plus and minus are pretty universal. So I could right mouse click on this first button, go over to edit text, and literally just put a plus sign in there. And click OK. And you can see it changed. I'm going to come over to the second one, right mouse click on it, go to edit text, put in a minus button, and click OK. Now it looks real funky because that looks small and that looks real big. It'll clear itself up when we run the program. So don't worry about it. All right? So that's I've now created 3 rows. I can be as anal about this stuff as I want to. In other words, I could have called this tip layout, or I'm sorry, table layout tip calculator. I could have called this table row 0 tip calculator. So you can get as granular with your naming conventions as you want to, all right, or think you need to. So I'm going to add another row here. So there's table row 3, and it says I want to put 2 text views underneath that. All right, so again, I come right back up to form widgets, text view, drag the first one, let go, drag the second one, and let go. And again, as you can see, this is sort of coming to form. It doesn't look good right now. There's been absolutely no work that we've done on this aesthetically. All right. So the first one here, these are the tips. So the first thing that we have here, we're going to call this tip label. So I'm going to right mouse click on this, go over to edit ID, change it to tip label. All right, then I'm going to right mouse click on the text view, choose edit ID again, and call this tip text view. All right, so those are done. So the only thing that's left is to add our last row, which is going to have our total information. So I've got to go back out to layouts again, to table row, drag that up. Sometimes it doesn't take. Drag it up. There it goes. There's table row 4. And under there, I want to put 2 text views under here also. All right, in the first text view, I'm going to edit its ID and call it total label. And the second one, I'm going to edit its ID and call it total text view. Now, if you look here on the side, if you look where my mouse is way off to the right, that's looking the way that it should look. All right, all that stuff that you see in there is looking the way that it should look. All right. What I'd like to do next is to change all these labels, because to say text view is bad. If I ran it right now, that's all you'd see would be text view, text view, text view, a plus sign, a minus sign, text view, text view, text view, text view. It's not very illustrative of what the program's supposed to be doing. All right. So what I want to do is I want to put in all the strings for these. The way that you do that, if you look up on the screen here, is I go down underneath here, and under my res folder, I've got a folder called values. And under that values folder, I've got 3 different files. These are my dimensions. And we talked about this last time. This is where you set up things for either DP, which are density independent pixels, and SP, which are scale independent pixels. The SP stuff that you set up is for fonts. The DP is for everything that's not fonts. We're not going to play with that right now. We are going to play with strings in just a minute. That's where we're going to add a few things in just a second. All right? And the last one that's in here is styles. This is about as close as this language gets to you being able to put in the equivalent of CSS. We're not going to do that right now either. So I'm going to double click on strings to open up that file. And when it opens it up here in, rather than an XML mode, it opens it up in graphical mode. So I can add things right here if I want to. I click the add button, I tell it what I want it to add, etc. I find that to be too much work. Okay? So instead, what I'm going to do is down here, where it says resources, right next to it, there's a button or a tab that says strings.xml. I'm going to click that, and it brings up this file. This is XML if you have never seen it before. XML stands for the Extensible Markup Language. The idea was, before there was HTML5, after there was HTML 4.1, people said HTML is too friggin' hard. So they came up with a new language that was called XML, the Extensible Markup Language. The difference between XML and HTML is with XML you create your own tags. You can call them whatever you want. And there literally are 200 or 300 different versions of XML out there. There's CML, which is chemical CML, where chemists can talk back and forth to one another. There's math XML. There's music XML. Like I said, there's tons of them out there. All right. So this right here is what's known as your XML prologue. XML only got as far as version 1. That's why you see that. Version equal 1. All right. The encoding, we're using a universal transform format 8-bit code. Okay. These are our string resources, so this is the stuff we want to put in there. See this line right here? The one that's in blue? If you've got that line in there, remove it, because that was the string for the hello world that we already removed. So we don't want that. So I'm going to get rid of it. All right? And I'm going to go and add the stuff that you see in your handout. All right? And it's the stuff that you see on step 18 that's on page 10. So it'll take a couple seconds to put this in there. All right? I've got the app name, the activity, the settings, etc. So I'm just going to come down and put in most of the other stuff that you see here. You see this name right here? That's the same name that I used up above when I set that particular field up. You want to make sure those are the same name. So there's going to be for my bill amount. You'll notice I'm putting some blank lines in here. That doesn't matter. You can either put in blank lines if you want, or you can leave them out. All right. And here's the increase. So there's the plus sign. So I could have done it that way also. The last one is pretty much the same as this one, so I'm going to change this from tip to total. Now I'm going to go back to the other one, and if you are watching me do this, it's the same thing that you see in step 18 that's on page 10 of your handout. All right? So I'm going to save this. Always a good idea to save often. And I'm going to jump back then to my activity main file, this one that you saw right here. Now I'm able to actually put my stuff in, but I'm doing it what's known as being the right way. So for instance, I'm going over here to bill amount label. I'm going to right mouse click on it, and I'm going to edit its text. All right. Well, I'm going to look down here, and is there a bill amount label? There it is. So I'm going to click OK. And you may or may not be able to tell that now says bill amount. All right. I'm going to go to this one. Right mouse click, choose edit text, and I'm going to make that bill amount. And it now says 3460. All right. I'm just going to keep making my way through this. Should have this with me too, so I don't goof it up. Again, I manually put these in, but I could now go back and change it, edit the text, and put in increase, and it's still going to have the plus sign. I could right mouse click on this, choose edit text, put in decrease, and that minus sign will be there. All right? And what's left? Now again, when you look at this, it doesn't look beautiful right now. There's still a lot of tweaking that could be done to it. But hopefully what you're seeing is it's starting to look a lot like what I showed you the actual final version would look like. Again, it's not exactly the same, but it's looking similar to it. So what I just showed you in there as far as setting all that different stuff up is what you see on steps 19 through 27 that are on page 11. Okay. Now, if you turn up to page 12, again, this is me speaking from working with this stuff the last couple of years. You may or may not agree. But I've got right here on page 12, it says after you get some practice, you'll probably want to use the properties window to set your properties. But notice, as it says, it is initially harder to use than Visual Studio. What I mean by that is you're used to going over to Visual Studio, those of you, and that's basically everybody in here, that's in the C# class, and you know where the properties are, etc. It's set up a little bit differently in here. All right? And that can sometimes drive people a little bit nuts. So what I'm going to do, and this is what you see on pages 13, 14, 15, and 16, that's what I'm going to do for you right now, and that is to try to set the properties. But setting the properties, rather than setting them using the properties window, I'm going to go to the XML file and do that. All right? And if I confused you, what I mean is I'm going to go over to here to Activity Main XML, and I'm going to actually change the stuff that you see in here and add to it. So I'm on step 29 that's on page 13. So where it's got text view here and text view here, text view and edit text, I guess. This is page 12 on step 28, I should say, in your book. So I'm going to go, and some of the stuff is in here already, and I'm going to add the new stuff. And please look up on the screen here. That's the beginning, and that's the end. Everybody see that? So since I want to change where the end is, I'm going to just hit enter a couple times so I can put my new stuff in. All right? And I'll clean it up a little bit later. Now, I'm not going to take the time to explain to you what wrap content and all of this other stuff means. There's just not enough time to do it. I'm going to put in some padding. This is very similar to padding that you put in CSS. And it's 10 dp, which means that that's 10 density independent pixels of padding that I'm putting in. And I'm saying that the font size should be 20 SP. Remember, that's scalable independent pixels. All right? And I'm also saying that I want it to be bold. So that's what I've added right here. So hopefully by just saying that, that made enough sense to you that what we added here was some padding, we changed the text size, and we changed the text style. All right? And that's what's on page 12 of the handout that I gave you. All right? So I'm just going to work my way up from there. So I'm on Page 13 now. Oh, I guess I'm sorry. I didn't do the ones for the edit text. So I got to do those. So those are done. Now I got to come down here. Again, I'm going to hit enter a couple times. Why that's not there, but all right. You'll notice much of this stuff is here already. See this? Where it says input type equal number decimal. Everybody see that? That's because I chose the 42.0. If I had just chosen the 42 without the, then it would have just said input type equal number. What that's saying is the only thing that this is going to accept are either going to be digits or a decimal place, which is what I'd want that to be. So again, I'm going to come in and add some padding again. I'm going to add the text size and the bold. Well, that's pretty much the exact same thing I had up here. So I'm going to copy that and just paste it in there. All right. So that's everything, I believe, on page 12. So I'm going to jump over to page 13. I'm going to do the same stuff for 13, 14, 15, and 16 in your handout. All right. Now, what you may want to do when you do this, if you look up on the screen here, is when you do a couple of these, save, and then jump back to your graphical layout. And then see how it's changed? All right. Again, this isn't going to look fantastic when it gets done, but it'll be at least presentable. All right. So my goal is to, in fact, let's take a break right now. And while you take your break, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in all the information that you see on pages 13, 14, 15, and 16. All right, so take a break. Let's come back. We'll make it about 10 after 11. That'll give me 20 minutes. It should give me enough time, even if I have any problems. All right, and we'll pick it up there.